Recently, I was asked about doing a Green Lantern full movie breakdown. And I thought to myself, can I do that? Well, yes, I can. But then I thought, why not compare it to the animated Green Lantern film that came out 2 years before? So, having watched both these films back to back, there's not that much bad things I can say about either of them, really. I watched them constructively and I thought, I won't go into this as the fan that I am of the films and the animations, and I thought, I'll watch it and base everything that I see on the story, the characters, the build up, and everything round about that, and not just that costume's terrible. Which, to be fair, the costume is terrible in the live action one. The story in the animated one is about Hal Jordan getting the ring and coming to terms about him being the next Green Lantern. And it's not your standard comic book origin story. They deviated a wee bit from the comics, and I think that's a good thing because it's a different universe. They have to do things a bit differently so that they can say, that's the comics, this is us. The story for the animated one was done really well. It was well scripted and it was well rounded. The thing about it I didn't like is they didn't show Hal Jordan's funny side enough in it. They showed he doesn't do what people say, he doesn't fall in line, he does things his way because he thinks that that's the right way to do them. That follows the comic a bit because it doesn't show that he's fun as well. And when he becomes serious, he is serious. I mean, Hal Jordan's one of the Green Lanterns that almost destroyed the Green Lantern Corps because of what he did in some of the comics. In comparison to the live action film, they spent a bit too much showing his fun side because they had Ryan Reynolds. They have to show people that he is a fun person, the one-liners, the silly jokes. They had to get that in, but I think they focused a bit too much on the jokes a wee bit in the live action film, as opposed to showing his darker side and how things could have progressed. The story itself for the live action film, it was a solid story. It showed that these characters are needing to go somewhere, but it get fought down by the terrible CGI, the jokes for the sake of jokes. It reminded me a bit of Thor Love and Thunder. The jokes that were in that just seemed to be there for the sake of trying to make it funny. There was no real need to make it funny. If there's humour there, it'll come out. If there's jokes to be told, then find the right time to do it. In the animated Green Lantern First Flight, there was hints of humour that came through, but they came through naturally, rather than being forced through, because we've got Ryan Reynolds, we should push this through, we should do this funny thing. The whole thing just needed to take itself a bit more seriously. It didn't take itself as seriously as it should have. This could possibly have been the first full push for the DC universe to have a linked universe, but it failed because they didn't take it seriously enough. They didn't show enough of things in outer space. It was all basically on Earth. Whereas his origin story, the majority of it is taken away from Earth because that is going to be essentially where he has to be. He has to be away from Earth. And the live action just stuck to Earth. He was in 3-4 space scenes in the film, whereas in the animated one, the majority of it was in space, where it should have been. It's the origin story of how he becomes the Green Lantern, that doesn't really take place on Earth. He gets the ring on Earth and then he goes. The amount of time spent on trying to build up characters that we didn't need built up. It brings in Amanda Waller, who was a good idea to bring her in because she is a character that can link all of DC's characters, and that would have been a great way to start building up a universe, but they didn't use her properly. They had so many great actors as well in the live action, and they just didn't use them to their full potential. And it seems to be a thing about DC and Warner Brothers in general, where they get in terrific actors and they don't use them to their full potential. They don't use them properly. It only seems to be in the animation where everything is done for a reason. There's bits here and there, and there's some of the DC animated films where it's like, was that needed? Is that actually going to further this universe? There's less of that than there is in the live action ones. They tried to focus too much on the fact that they had Ryan Reynolds, and this was just coming off of him being in X-Men Origins. People were screaming for him to do an actual Deadpool film. They wanted him as Deadpool, but properly. And then all of a sudden, he's at DC, he's playing Green Lantern. Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan, I think, was a great choice. But there's only so much the actor can do with the writing and the directing that happens. The whole thing about the costume, that sort of I think that cemented the fact that the film wasn't going to be a complete smash. It wasn't going to be a success because people were going mental about it. They're saying, what is that? It's so bad. Other companies had shown that you could do these things with an actual costume rather than a full CGI thing. It didn't need to be completely CGI. They could have had a Green Lantern costume made and they could have added effects to it later on rather than having him in the motion capture suit and just putting it in like that. It's not really essential for everything to be CGI. A lot of things can be done with practical effects. A lot of TV films and shows have completely changed and they've went back to using practical effects rather than using CGI for the sake of using CGI. With the animated film, it done so much more than what the live action one did. Obviously it can do a lot more because it's animated, but still the story was more grounded. It went round the way it should have. It showed that even though they're fighting fear, that they can't be afraid to show that they're afraid. The live action one tried to do that, but it didn't really push the point through enough, I think. If I'm being completely honest, having watched the live action one again and watching it objectively and not just watching it subjectively, I thought it's not as bad as it's been made out to be. I mean, it's nowhere near your 5-star classic films. I'd probably put it at about 2 out of 5. The story was there, but they just didn't do it properly. They could have looked at the animated one and said, this worked really well, this was successful, changed this up a bit, but keep this as the main key story, and also changed up the costume as well, taking out the comedy elements that were there just for the sake of being funny. If they had done things like that, it could have been a 3 or 4-star film. But I think at that time, Warner Brothers were just sort of finding their feet. They'd seen that Marvel had been doing all these things and that they were building up something, and this was them just trying to say, well, we've got all these characters, we can build up something. The animated Green Lantern, I would give that a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Although it wasn't perfect, the story was a lot more solid and the characters were built up a lot more. It went into their story more than what it did in the live action one. Having watched a few of the other animated DC Universe films and programmes, they do seem to be a lot more grounded. They do build the characters up so much more. It shows that when you do things right, when you get the right story, the right characters, in the right form, that it works well. So if we do see any other Green Lantern things in DC from now on, they're going to have to look at everything that's came before and say what worked, what didn't work. If they just try and do the same story again, it's really not going to work. They done the animated one, it worked. They done the live action one, it didn't work. Now they're going to be doing a series. It's going to have to be completely different, but it will need to stay true to the source material, or else it is going to just completely fail. I'm looking forward to the Green Lantern Corps that should be coming out, I think 2026 is when it's slated to drop. We can only wait and see about things that are happening with that. Hopefully it's been quite an informative video for you, and if you want, go and rewatch Green Lantern, but try and look past the costume, which I had to do for a long time. So until the next video, bye now.